Hi, I'm Bryan Hartson, and welcome to the Bryan Hartson Show. Today, I have got with me an amazing person who's going to tell us a little bit about life and how we can get through the next few days, weeks, months, and years. Sandra Cooze is an intuitive traumatic release and self empowerment coach. She's a teacher, certified traumatic incident reduction facilitator, and published author. Her book, Journey to Yourself: How to Heal from Trauma, is written by someone who is a teaching memoir that walks readers not only through her own story of abuse and healing, but offers teaching and talks people through how to get to the next steps. And so, if you will welcome me, uh, Sandra. Hi, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you here. Sandra, tell us a little bit about your backstory that got you to where you are today.
Okay. Well, my story started with my own journey of healing. I was molested when I was 12. I was sexually harassed when I was 14. I was bullied in school between 16 to 17 years old. I was sexually assaulted multiple times between the age of 19 and 25, and I was raped when I was 22. Now, I tried to reach out for help, but no one really heard me. And so I had to find my own way into healing. And this really set the stage for me understanding what it really means to live with trauma and how we can overcome it. And so, really, my story became my purpose.
So, Sandra, this happened early on in your life, and you're now coming to tell us about it. What was the magic that made you decide it's okay? It's okay for me to talk about what happened in my life and how I overcame it. So, how did that all evolve? That's got to be not only painful, but the experiences that you've had from that period of time into where you are now, it's got to be fruitful as well. Am I right?
Yes, well, it definitely was a journey. It took me about 20 years to heal. But when I healed, I didn't focus on healing. It just gradually happened on its own. It was like when you heal from trauma, it's nothing major that suddenly changes your life. It's those little things where you go, okay, that's interesting. That makes you start to look at things differently. So for me, it really started when I began to look at myself and the way I behaved in relationships, why I sabotaged everything. When I realized I sabotaged every relationship and started to question why. And the more I questioned, the more I understood what was really going on within me and what I had to work on to change that.
Very interesting. And so, how did you take the next leap of faith into being able to talk about it in public and get to where you're comfortable right now, sitting in front of people around the nation right now, actually?
Well, it was really a friend of mine who told me that my story was my purpose because I never really thought about what happened to me would be important or interesting for someone else because everybody goes through trauma. And me growing up in Germany, I was taught you never speak about it because what would the neighbors think?
Uh huh.
And so, but now I'm in Canada, and Canada is a little different from Germany in so many ways. And people are more open. So the first time I talked to my friend and really opened up about it, or she rather pulled it out of me until I was in tears talking to her about it. And she was like, Sandra, this is what you need to do. You can help so many people with your story. And after she said that, I was at home and I was thinking about it. And I was like, all right, this feels right. Because the more I thought about it, the more the knowledge that I'd gained over the years came back into my consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And I just opened up to the possibility, and a month later, I was at a local vendor event, and I went on stage and I shared part of my story. I was so nervous, but the feedback that I got was so positive and empowering. And so I thought, okay, well, this feels good. This feels right. I'm reaching people and I'm helping people. So my story matters. And I think this was the turning point.
So your story does matter, by the way. I think it's important,
Yes,
and I think it's
thank you.
important we talk about it. Uh, Now you've written a book, right?
Yes, I have.
Are you excited
It's
about the fact
actually
that you wrote a book?
true. It is. It's called Journey to Yourself, How to Heal from Trauma. And Journey to Yourself is actually going to be a trilogy. I work on a second book right now because trauma healing is only the first step to really understanding who we are and stepping into our power, releasing everything we're not. And so, with
Uh-huh.
How to Heal from Trauma, I share my story a little bit. And for the rest of the book, I turned into a workbook. So basically, I demystify trauma. I look at it from every angle. I explain it in a way that really we can understand what really is happening in our body, because when we think about trauma, we think about the big things and we always think about the story. But it's
Mm-hmm.
not about the story. The story is just something that happened and will always be part of our life story. This will never change, and we cannot go back in time and change it, but we can
Sure.
change ourselves. We can heal ourselves. And so this is what I want to accomplish with my book, explaining what trauma really is. And I have exercises, room for notes, journaling prompts. So really a hands-on workbook for people who are ready to heal.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but in a few minutes, we're going to talk about some actual things that people can actually do rather than
Yes.
just have a conversation about what's going on in your life. We're going to actually help people, aren't we?
Yes, well, I hope so.
So
I hope.
before we get to that on the other side of the break, how are you feeling now in life? I mean, for people that have trauma, I mean, for anybody that has something that goes on in their life, I think
Mhm.
that we all look at the moment, we're like, oh man, I'm never going to get past this. Is that right? We think of
I've
that,
been there. I've been there for so many years.
yeah, and it's sort of like, I'm not going to get to tomorrow. And then when we get to tomorrow, we look back to yesterday and go, wow, tomorrow's really cool. And then, so you wrote a book that got us from where your yesterday was into
Mhm.
today and focuses on in tomorrow. Am I right?
Yeah, right.
So tell us, without telling us about tomorrow, without the healing stuff that you're going to talk about in just a minute, tell us about that journey and the dark side into the light.
Well, we all have heard about our shadow self or the
Uh-huh.
dark night of the soul from a spiritual aspect. And that's really the moment we hit rock bottom. And the thing with rock bottom is the only way is up. So you have no other way
Mm.
to go but up. So that's what I did. And that's what I help others do. And I can tell you, going up is so empowering because you're no longer controlled by your trauma. You say, I've had enough.
Mm.
You say, my trauma is not going to control my life, because you have hopes, you have dreams, but you can only reach them if you leave the past in the past and release it. And I can
So,
tell you that it's an amazing feeling.
so I've got a question for you, Sandra.
Mhm.
So the person that has trauma in their life, regardless of whether it's of a nature of any sort, when you
Mhm.
have trauma, the first thing you do is think of the fact that, well, I've got trauma, but I can handle it myself. I don't want the world to know about it,
Right.
right?
That's not handling, that's dealing and suppressing. Yes.
And so we'll talk more about that in just a minute, correct?
Yes, we will.
Awesome. Be with you in just a moment on the other side of here. Some great stuff for you on how to help heal yourself. Hi, I'm Bryan Hartson, and thank you for joining me on the Bryan Hartson Show. We have got an amazing person with us today, Sandra. Sandra is with us to talk with us about, well, healing and how to take what's going on in our lives from past and present and moving on to the future. So, Sandra, if we can spend the next few minutes just talking about what's next for those that need some help. You've got some advice for us, don't you?
Yes. Well, first, I would like to go into what trauma is and what has to change for us to heal. And to do that, I would like to draw your attention to a paper cut. Because when our finger gets cut by a piece of paper, it gets traumatized, literally. But we don't worry too much about it. We clean the wound, we put a Band-Aid on it and forget about it because we know the body is self-healing. So the body will take care of it.
That's true.
Yes, but when it comes to trauma from anything, it could be sexual assault, it could be a car accident, a sudden death of a loved one, anything that could traumatize us, big or small. We always go back into what happened. So we think about it over and over and over again, try to make sense of it, trying to make it unhappen. But we can't. And yet we don't go back to the moment we received a paper cut. We just say, it's annoying, but we move on. But our body is self-healing on all levels, which means not just the physical, that it heals a paper cut, a broken bone, a new kidney, anything. It also heals on emotional level. But we have to allow it. So when we keep focusing on the story of what happened, it's the same as if you would rip off the scab from the paper cut over and over again. So the first thing we have to do is move away from the story so that we can open ourselves up to healing.
So how do we do that?
Well, we have to.
I know that's a big question, but how do we do that?
It is. And I mean, the beginning of it is different for everyone because trauma healing has no one-size-fits-all approach. So everybody will need something a little different. The first thing that I recommend to my clients is journaling. So journaling in the way of just sitting there having pen and paper and just write whatever comes into your mind, write it down. So you could imagine your thoughts being like a yarn ball that sits in your mind.
Okay.
And as you write, the yarn ball starts to unravel and goes from your head, through your shoulders, in your arm, through your hand, and through the pen out onto paper. So you're releasing the energy of the thought, of your emotions, letting it go. This is liberating. It helps you to breathe. This is a very important first step. Then comes the trigger release. Now, trigger release is what I love doing. I mean, I still get triggered every once in a while, but I welcome them now because I know that whenever I get triggered, something is ready to come up and be released. So, and here's a very easy technique that I use myself whenever I'm triggered after I lashed out at my husband. So to really understand what happened, because every trigger is an emotional memory from something that happened in the past and that was just brought back up by something someone else said or did, or a smell, a song, anything that triggers us and causes a negative reaction within us that just rushes to the surface. And how to do that is you need to follow the trigger. So after you had time to calm down, you look back at the trigger. At first you have to give the emotion a name. Because when we're being triggered, we have a negative feeling. We don't know what it is. We're just being agitated. So we have to understand what we're feeling. Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it not feeling good enough? Is it jealousy? Is it, I don't know, anything we could feel? And then we have to ask ourselves, okay, where did I feel like this before? And then we follow that trigger. So we remember the emotion we felt and we go back to a time we felt like this before. And then
Mm-hmm.
we look at the incident to understand it. By understanding it, we can release it. So, and then we continue, because a trigger like this is not just one incident. It happened again and again and again. It just kept on building up until we exploded. So
And
then we,
so now you just said that you give the trigger a name. What do you mean?
the
You give the
emotion.
trigger a name, like Jolly or Paul or
No, what I mean is the emotion that's with the trigger. Because, like I said, when we're being triggered, we don't necessarily know how we feel. We just know we're upset, we're angry, we explode emotionally, but we
okay,
don't know what we feel. So we have to understand what we're feeling.
got you.
Then we have to follow that feeling.
And then what?
Then we look
I mean,
at,
we're packing a lot of stuff into just a few minutes. I get that, and we're gonna have
yeah,
more to talk about as time goes on. But just for what we've got right now, what's next?
what's next. Then we look at the incident that comes up in our mind where we felt
Mm-hmm.
like this before. And we just observe what happened to bring understanding to it. By understanding it, we release it automatically. Then we move, we ask again, where else did I feel like this before? And then we move further into our past
Okay,
until we reach the very first incident, which we will know when it's the first incident because it will be the most intense. And we look
gotcha.
at it, we understand it, and with that we release it. And that's a
Okay.
very simple technique to release triggers, because triggers are not the enemy.
And for our triggers to release our triggers, do we do it at a specific time during the day, or do we do it in solitude? Do we do it when we go to sleep? When do we release our triggers?
Well, ideally after you have been triggered. So so once you had
All
time
right,
to
I'll give
calm
you that one.
yes, once you had a few minutes to calm down, then you start to work through the triggers. And you can do it by yourself, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
I also work with couples and I teach them how to help each other, coach each other through a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many times we're arguing and we're being triggered back and forth, and we think our partner is the problem when he really isn't.
Ooh, good point. Very good
So I
point.
help them, yes, I help them through and help them to coach each other, help them through the triggers. This is so empowering for the relationship. Really being able to help our partner is a whole new level of love.
That's true. Sandra, I've got a question for today. And
Yes.
so right now we're in a place in society where we've been locked down for well over a year, and we're starting to emerge. Now, during the
Mm-hmm.
past year, um, we've had to deal with a lot of, I'm sure, triggers in our lives that we weren't able to just walk outside the door and go do whatever we want to bypass that. We've actually had to like hone in on ourselves. What's your recommendation for our friends and our families that are watching us right now? How do we deal with with life today, with um, just even with social media, with the triggers that come on? There's a lot of triggers in social media that somebody will just put something on to the internet, and it not only becomes fact, but now it pulls triggers for a lot of people of hate, rage, and anger.
Yes. Well, the triggers that came up from COVID and everything that's posted on social media and all the fear mongering and everything that's going on is based on the fact that we're powerless in a situation. That's fear.
Uh-huh.
So, which means we feel like we have no control over this virus. We have no control over whether we get it or not, or a little bit of control. And this
Right.
scares us. it's the same with trauma. So many people are traumatized from COVID, just from the fear of not being able to control it. So, which means we have to take our power back. And we do
How do we
that
do that?
by healing. We, again, when we feel a trigger coming on by something we read on social media, or feeling like, let's say the masks come off. We don't need masks anymore. So many people are going to be terrified of doing that.
Yeah.
Simply because they are afraid that now they're vulnerable, because the mask was like a shield for them.
Right.
Of course, other people argue that they didn't help at all, but okay, whatever. It's just that we have to understand again where this fear is coming from. So when we feel the trigger coming, follow the trigger to understand the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
If it's fear, ask yourself, why? Why am I afraid? Where was I afraid like this before? It's the same. It's always the same thing with trigger release. We have to understand the emotion and follow it to a point where we felt like this before.
Okay. So tomorrow when you wake up and you get ready for your day, what are you going to do that makes it different from today? And what is it that our friends and listeners need to wake up tomorrow to say, today's a different day because I got a chance to watch Sandra yesterday, and this is what I'm doing that's going to be different? Because isn't it fact that tomorrow needs to be different from today in order for us to be in a better position than we were today?
It has nothing to do with today, it has everything to do with us. So I would say choose to be a better person than you were today. Be better, do better. I mean, when we talk about trauma healing, it's the baby steps. So we have to step out of our comfort zone. We have to do the things that scare us to prove to ourselves that we're going to be fine. So tomorrow, do something that scares you. If it's going out for a walk without your mask, for example.
Mm,
If it's, I don't know, talk to someone you have never talked to but always wanted to reach out of fear of rejection.
uh-huh.
Talk to them, challenge yourself, step out of your comfort zone. That's the best way to heal. Whenever you're triggered, follow the trigger and understand it and release it right then and there. That's how you heal your trauma. Gentle, easy, and fast.
Excellent point. So if we're feeling triggered by our trauma, stop and take a step to the side.
Yes, and just observe it without judgment.
Excellent. Sandra, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. And
Thank
I'm
you so
looking forward
much.
to more time with you. And I think we're looking in the future to having some more segmented features where you might be able to give us some ideas and helps for a day-to-day basis in little, tiny little, small little increments that make us better. Is that correct?
Yes, I will pace myself next time.
Awesome. Well, really enjoyed you having being here with us, and I want to thank all of you for being with us on the Bryan Hartson Show. We will be back in tomorrow with another amazing guest. In the meantime, remember, today is the first day of the rest of your life, and this moment counts for tomorrow.